And welcome. Raising the Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you this week? I hope you are well, enjoying the beautiful weather. If you're having beautiful weather where you are, we are definitely having it here, and it makes me very happy. Everything about it, wearing shorts, driving the scooter everywhere. I love it. I have had to mow the lawn 2 more times already this week. Crazy how fast that grows this time of year. And I say lawn, but it's actually mostly dandelions, and now is the time you can really tell that. Most of the year, it looks like it might be grass, but right now it's just those annoying little yellow flowers everywhere you look. So lots to talk about this week. The never-ending Trump circus, disgusting Ashli Babbitt settlement, more Republican insanity, some great pushback from Bill Gates, the foundation of mental game mastery, and some new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what gave me a lift this week and what things are pulling me down? For my ups, the first one, our kids' high school, one of the classes available is rock band. So a group of kids get together, teacher helps them learn a bunch of rock songs and perform them at the end of the term. It's a pretty amazing thing, really. I actually taught 1 semester of rock band class several years ago. Did not go well for me, honestly. It's a hard nut to crack, how to get 15 teenagers, to play in a band together. I tried splitting them into 2 groups. That didn't work. Anyway, this year's class had their big show this week, and their teacher did a much better job than I did. It's still tricky. I mean, they had literally 7 guitar players, all playing the exact same thing. You couldn't pick out what anyone was doing. But I realized that's not the point. The point is they're having fun. And it looked like they really were, for the most part. So Margaret and Francis were out of town for a couple of days. I was in my usual hermit mode. But I heard about this show kind of last minute, and I thought, I really should get out. So I headed over, and it was pretty fun. One highlight, oddly enough, was that my niece and her folks were there. And she actually came over and said hi to me. That's it. That's the surprise. She went out of her way to come over and say hi. I was so surprised. I actually said, you came over to say hi to me? And she's like, well, yeah. But for some reason, I was really struck with that a teenager in a social situation among friends and classmates would choose to go talk to a grown-up family member. That's weird, right? It's remarkable to me, but honestly, it's probably the biggest consistent trait you see with kids from this school across all the years. And I think also from kids who came up through the Waldorf system. But they're just remarkably comfortable interacting with adults. And that's a real advantage. I know Peter has absolutely benefited from this at work, in college. He's just not intimidated. And you think about it, he's coming from a school of like 65 students in the whole school, all 4 grades, going to a place with over 30,000 undergrads, but he has no problem making the adjustment, no hesitation, reaching out to teachers, communicating with them, connecting with other students, and there's no doubt it's helping him succeed in all kinds of ways. Anyway, that was really something. I mentioned I've been riding the scooter a lot, and that's a small thing, but it just really is a plus in my days. It's fun just on its own. How often, when you're running an errand, like going to the store, is the trip itself, there and back, fun? It's not, right? You're just in the car. It's just part of the errand. But with this, the trip is a couple minutes of joy. That's really nice. I've had a few friends take a ride on it. That's fun, too. The only sad part is that I was checking the company's website this week, and prices have gone up, like 25% since we bought ours in January. It's got to be the tariffs. These things come straight from China. I honestly expect them to go up a lot more. I wouldn't even be surprised if this was one of the small businesses that don't make it. It's just, if they doubled their price, there's just no way the sales would be there. Anyway, we'll see. But I am worried about that. And that's a bummer because I would love to see more people around here get them. It's just a complete no-brainer. In a little town like ours, perfect for all kinds of errands. It's all electric, renewable energy. It's super fun. Hopefully I'm wrong about prices shooting up. One really nice sign of the season Margaret and I had our first dinner outside on the front porch. We have a nice little spot on our porch for meals, weather permitting, and it was just perfect. So out we went. That was lovely. Francis is out of town this week on a school trip, service week, working on a farm up in Minnesota somewhere. That's not an up or a down. It's just interesting, sort of previewing full empty nest mode. Still a couple years away from that, but interesting. I also got another vocal recorded this week on one of the songs I've been working on. Doesn't sound like an accomplishment necessarily, but it actually is pretty hard to find the right time and get a performance I'm happy with. That's the biggest thing. My voice is just so out of shape now, and I'm, significantly older than when I was doing it full time, which also makes it harder. It honestly feels like sort of a miracle when I actually do get one I can live with. And even that, if you heard it, it would not sound like I'd put that much time into it. It sounds, pretty normal and casual, like the demo that it is. Nothing to write home about, but it's about the best I can do at this point. And I have 2 more songs to get to that I'm honestly not sure I can pull off. They're a bit more dynamic, got some higher notes in there. We'll see. But it's actually a little stressful thinking about it. And this time of year with the allergies kicking in on top of that makes it even harder. Anyway, hopefully that'll work out. Just sort of a funny situation. For my downs, I have been a little bummed that there aren't more people looking to play pickleball. It sounds, whiny, but I really do miss that chance to be active. And it's pretty frustrating to realize how dependent this is on other people. That's probably the only downside to pickleball for me. I want to be able to have a consistent plan to get good cardio exercise, like when we have our park and rec programs over the winter. And summer outdoor pickleball just doesn't have that. So I think I need a plan B now, like maybe running again or biking. Not excited about those. Anyway, a little frustrated with that this week. Also, I mentioned last week being bummed with the results of the Facebook campaign I had going. Nothing new to report there. But I had a day, and it's really just one day, where I was sort of stuck in holding mode and nothing really made sense to work on. And I was reminded, when I truly have nothing to do, that's not good for me. It's just very uncomfortable, strangely uncomfortable. I can't just do nothing, like watch a movie or something during the day. That's never going to work. Has to be something that feels productive. Just a strange space to be in, not something I would want to continue and not sustainable at all. Which sort of brings me back to the exercise question. I could do that and feel it was productive, but that wasn't an option either. My sister-in-law up in St. Paul, a couple blocks from her house, is a park with a pickleball court. And there are enough people in her area who play, she can always find a game. She just heads over, doesn't need to check with anyone in advance, just knows she can pop over and pick up a game pretty much any day she wants. That would be perfect for me, but we're just never going to have that in our little town, I'm afraid. Anyway, that's going to be something for me to figure out going forward. What can I do to make sure I always have something worthwhile to work on? All right, that's ups and downs for this week. Next up, top stories. The big story this week is how many big stories there are this week and every week. I keep track of what's happening during the week and write things down that I want to talk about in the next pod. And every day, I swear, every single day, there are multiple things worth talking about. It's crazy. And it's not good. You probably heard it's actually part of their plan to flood the zone and overwhelm everyone trying to keep up and push back. I'm also reminded this week that the vast majority of this craziness ultimately falls on Congress and the Republican Party, the senators, House members. Trump's doing it, but they could stop it. They really could. Any day they could hold hearings, slow things down, push back, impeach at some point. A lot of things they could do, and that's what the founders intended for them to do. But so far, it's mostly just a whole lot of nothing, right? So ultimately, I expect history will put all this more on them than on Trump. Anyway, here are the many things on this week's list. This is not Trump directly, but the new conflict between India and Pakistan this week really has my attention. This is a super dangerous situation. Again, nothing to do directly with Trump, but in times like this, you really need serious professional diplomats to engage. And historically, we've had a lot of influence all around the world, especially things just like this. I hate to even think about how little influence we actually have now and how important that loss could be. It's genuinely dangerous. I actually expect we will see some sort of a world crisis spiral beyond where it otherwise would have, just because of how inept and unserious they are. It's just a matter of time. Speaking of which, Trump is apparently stepping back now from trying to end the Ukraine war. He promised over and over, I'll end this thing on day one, even before I'm sworn in. It'll be so easy. Now, 3 months in, he's giving up. And what does that even mean? I mean, I hear European leaders say, we can't do this without the U.S. And I believe them, but it's a little hard for me to believe at the same time. It's hard to imagine we were actually helping. Anyway, it's a major failure on their part. Just shows, like I said, how weak and inept they are. On the immigration front, they are still not bringing back Abrigo Garcia, resisting the courts. There was talk this week of flying people to Libya. So outrageous. Fortunately, the courts, stepped in on that one for now. And then when Trump, in an interview, you probably saw this, he was asked, don't you need to follow the Constitution in these cases? He said, I don't know. You need to check with my lawyers. So you swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, to see that the laws are faithfully executed, but you don't know if you need to actually do that? That's where we are. Oh, geez. Trump is finally getting his big military parade, apparently, this summer. Just happens to fall on his birthday. We'll see how that ends up, but the whole idea is just so out of touch and small and embarrassing. He even tried to rename Veterans Day, like for real. He wanted to call it, I think, World War II Victory Day, something like that, which, of course, automatically leaves out every other veteran, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan. Nothing for you. We'll just celebrate the war I like. Seems like maybe he pulled back from that, but you never know with this guy. How can he be so stupid with some of these things? This one really pissed me off. Ashli Babbitt, one of the January 6th rioters, maybe you recognize that name. She was killed by an officer in the Capitol while she was trying to break in. She was climbing through a window into the House chamber that had been broken out when she was shot by one of the officers there. So a clear insurrectionist, obviously, no question about it. The government has decided to pay her family damages, $30 million in a wrongful death suit. Our tax dollars supporting a January 6th rioter. Absolutely disgusting. And it's not just the money, though. That's disgusting, outrageous. It's that it's really about rewriting history. These people tried to violently overthrow our government. We all saw it. We all know it happened. One of the darkest days in our history. But Trump calls them patriots and heroes, political prisoners. He pardoned all of them, right? And he's trying to wipe away all that reality. It's just beyond shameful. Mike Waltz, of course, Director of National Security, out of that position this week. That seems like, Director of National Intelligence is the title, sorry, which seems like an oxymoron now, right? National Intelligence with these clowns. But Signalgate got him, apparently. But then Marco Rubio as temporary replacement. That makes no sense. Secretary of State is a full-time job, to say the least, and all over the world, see above, India, Pakistan. DNI, also a full-time job, but in D.C. Daily briefings, critically important, but just another sign of them not being serious and not knowing what they're doing. But worse, oh my goodness, there was some talk of Stephen Miller as the new full-time DNI. I don't know how serious that is. Heard something about it. This guy, seriously. I was reading about Hitler's top people, Himmler and Goebbels. I was curious which one was more like Stephen Miller in their role, because I don't really remember that, details about that part of the history. It turns out Goebbels was the propagandist, so that's clearly Miller now. Himmler was the head of the SS, the brutal security force, and the leader of the extermination programs. He was directly in charge of the concentration camps and the mass killing of so many millions of people. So Stephen Miller, basically Goebbels now, and would not be surprised if he also became Himmler, if he given the chance. You listen to the vile things this guy says. He's a crazy, dangerous lunatic. And having him as DNI just boggles the mind. Seriously hope that doesn't happen. This was something. United Airlines has canceled flights into Newark Airport because of low FAA staffing. Imagine that. They've decided it's literally not safe to fly there because the FAA doesn't have enough manpower to handle the traffic. Imagine the disruption and the cost of that to them. They must have really felt strongly about that to make such a shocking decision. And that falls directly on Trump and Congress, right? It's up to them to support these services. That's wild. In the dumb category, quite a few here, a memorial to victims of gun violence was taken down at the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Isn't that what ATF does? Combat gun violence, among other things? Doesn't it seem like a good idea to remind them of the value of that work? Who does it help to take that down? The government is eliminating a teen pregnancy prevention program. The program reportedly reduced teen pregnancies by 78%, but they're getting rid of it. Who does that help? They've cut funding for PBS and NPR. So Sesame Street. Nope, no Sesame Street anymore, or at least we're not supporting it. Come on. They've gutted EPA staffing to where it was like 40 years ago. EPA, as you know, gives us clean air and clean water. Who's not for that? That only helps polluters, which hurts all of us. Huge cut to the National Science Foundation, led by DOJ. So all that research, no more. Do they not know the value that created and has created for decades? Super dumb. National Weather Service, crippling cuts right as hurricane season approaches. 30 offices are missing their chief meteorologist. Does that seem smart? Not a direct risk to us that much. In our part of the country, we don't get a lot of hurricanes and tornadoes and such, but a lot of other people do. Firing the science advisors to cancer research programs. So we don't want to cure cancer anymore. We don't want to lead the world in that kind of knowledge and expertise. Gutting the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. This is really super disheartening. This is the core of so much good that's come from DOJ over the years, Department of Justice. Just sort of the heart of their mission in our society, or one huge part of it. I listen to a lot of legal podcasts. This one seems to really be breaking lawyers' hearts. Here's another wild one. We apparently ordered intelligence agencies to step up their spying on Greenland to help facilitate a takeover. How is this even for real? I mean, seriously, Greenland. Intelligence resources are finite, right? You put them on one thing, they stop looking at another. So what actual threats are we ignoring now by putting energy into this ridiculous joke, this fever dream of his? There's no way this doesn't come back to bite us at some point. That's so dumb. I'm sure you heard this. Trump suggested we should reopen Alcatraz. He thinks it's a great symbol of strength and justice. And I don't even know. But it closed, decades ago because it's like double the cost of other prisons to run because it's in an island, right? You have to ship everything to and from. It's completely in disrepair. It makes no sense. In the corruption category, the government, this is wild. I had not heard about this. The countries that are under the tariffs, they're being pressured to purchase Starlink systems from Elon. Apparently, the country of Lesotho agreed to install a Starlink system that they had not otherwise considered in response to this pressure. Pure corruption right into Elon's pocket. Also, just this week, $2 billion from an Abu Dhabi company to a Trump family crypto project. This crypto thing is the grift that just keeps grifting for them. I mean, you can't even believe the brazenness of it. In the crazy or craven of the week category, this is embarrassing if they were capable of shame. Tom Homan, border czar, says, quote, President Trump is one of the most, if not the most knowledgeable presidents we've ever had, end quote. Can you imagine saying something like that with a straight face? He is clearly the complete opposite of that. He is an ignorant, uncurious blowhard whose only expertise is self-promotion and fraud. I mean, this is just pure North Korean dear leader stuff. And this is really wild. It's not Trump, but it's still super crazy. I had no idea about this. There's a group called Veterans on Patrol who believes that the government weather radar equipment that we use for forecasting is actually part of a weather weapon that is controlled by the military. They claim the government steered Hurricane Helene to where it hit so they can take land and harvest minerals. And they are talking about plans to sabotage weather radar facilities. How crazy is that? People are absolutely losing their minds. On the other hand, in the pushback category, I love this. Bill Gates came out this week against Elon Musk. Gates, of course, famous for his philanthropy. I think the biggest giver of all time, major impacts on global health. He said about Elon, quote, "I'd love for him to go meet the kids who have HIV now because he cut funding," end quote. Whew, that's great, right? I love him calling out Elon like that. And there's more and more of this to come. Defeats in courts, pushback from companies and law firms, protests. Courageous is contagious. As bad as things are, good things are happening also. People are standing up more and more every day. All right, that's Top Stories. Reminder, if you are enjoying the show, please take a moment, give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's a big help in reaching new listeners and helping everyone make it through these crazy times. So thank you for that. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week we talked about the idea that worrying is suffering in advance. Very timely for all of us. Plenty to worry about nowadays, but also not good for us and almost always unnecessary. So that's a good reminder. This week, I want to go back to the basics again, the foundational idea. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. So I talked to my Tuesday pod this week about a book called Inner Excellence. You can guess it's about the mental game. It's from another author. Had a big moment of fame this last winter when a star NFL player was seen reading it on the sidelines during a game. And what really struck me about the book was that, like so much other mental game advice you hear, it was all ideas and concepts and no real skills. Tells you what to do. Stay strong, don't get distracted, stay humble, etc. But doesn't tell you how to do it. And the problem is not unique to this book. It's 99% of what you hear out there. But it's super frustrating to me because it's such a waste for the people who need it. It doesn't work most of the time. It takes much longer when it does work. And it leaves you dependent on the coach or the resource. The way this book helped the player, it was A.J. Brown from the Eagles, was that he would read certain passages and that would help him stay in the mindset he wanted. And that's great. But just right there on its face, if you have to keep reading the book to get the help it offers, you haven't learned any skills. All you have is a collection of helpful reminders, and you'll always need those to get the mindset you want. So anyway, that brings us back to this week's Inner Game Gold, this observation. You have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. And notice, I'm not calling it a saying. It's not a reminder. It's an observation of mental game fact that reinforces the skills to direct your thoughts rather than let them direct you. This observation is the foundation of mastering your mental game. It points out our essential dual nature, meaning there are two people in there, the person who's saying all those negative things and the person who hears them, which is you. Once you really see that duality, now you can start to control your mental game. And until you do, it will likely control you. Most important, once you see it, you don't need a reminder. You don't need to keep rereading the book. You have it. You can't unsee it. You can do the work yourself from then on. So that's the power of this week's gold. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. Our book, Raise Your Inner Game and Sports Academy Training for Athletes, this is what they teach, how to really see that and internalize it, which is why they can make such a powerful difference in your life. So check those out if you're interested. RaiseYourInnerGame.com. You can learn more all about them there. But that's Inner Game Gold for this week. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, let's work on this Inner Game Gold observation. So just a typical sort of inner game exercise. And this comes straight from the book, in the sports training. And even if you've done it before, it's a helpful and sort of refreshing exercise. So the point of it is to experience for yourself in real time this reality that there are two people in there, one talking, one hearing what's being said. So the most basic version of the exercise is to just sit quietly for a few minutes and watch the show. Quiet your thoughts, notice a thought come up and say, look at that, there's a thought. And then keep observing and notice that other thoughts come up, and they keep coming up. Then, after you've observed that for a while, step back and reflect on what it tells you. The fact that you can observe the thoughts come and go shows that you are separate from them. And if you imagine the thoughts being spoken by someone, it's even more clear. One person speaking, the other is hearing the thoughts, and that person is you. Now, one little clarification. There's a difference between thinking and hearing thoughts. Hearing thoughts is what you're doing in this exercise. You're quiet, you notice them come up, you're hearing them. Thinking is when you are the one who's speaking in your head. You're actively engaged in generating thoughts. One way to see that is when you're talking back to the thoughts that come up. The other voice says, you don't know what you're doing. You say, yes, I do. Knock it off. That's thinking. So that's another helpful thing you can do in this exercise. Notice how different it feels to be thinking versus hearing thoughts, because that's where the power comes in, when you can step back and push back against the thoughts that are pulling you down. Anyway, that's our challenge this week. Play around with this observation. You have thoughts, but you're not your thoughts. All right, next up, highly recommended. Still reading Smokescreen by Sandra Brown. Have not changed my initial opinion. I'm interested enough to keep going, but not super excited about the writing. A fun and timely one. Margaret and Francis and I watched the movie Conclave this past week. I'd seen it before, but they hadn't. I thought they'd really like it, and they did. It really is an excellent movie, and so different from other things you see now. relatively quiet and slow, but at the same time very engaging and interesting. Beautiful images, great acting. Just very highly recommended for that one. Fun, too, to have an actual conclave happening this week. They're very rare, right? Like once in a generation almost. Wild to have one right when this movie is out. And it's funny, on the one hand, I feel like I know what's going on there because of this movie, right? It's very detailed and specific. I know all about conclaves. But I was reading about it. It turns out no film crew, or really anyone, has access to the Vatican. So a lot of this detail was just made up. Had to be. So we still really have no idea. Also interesting to me, all the news about it. It's such a big deal. Just announced today, as I'm writing this, they've selected a pope. The white smoke came out of the chimney. There are thousands of people in the piazza waiting for the news, and they're cheering, thrilled when word goes out. A new pope's been selected, even though they don't know who it is. So they're not cheering for any particular person. They're just cheering that they picked one. That's a funny thing to celebrate, isn't it? I mean, I appreciate and respect the tradition and all that, but are they afraid maybe they wouldn't have picked one this time? That the whole thing was just going to fail and we'd not have a pope from now on? It doesn't seem like there's much chance of that. I don't know. I'm sure there's a good reason. It does seem a little funny from the outside. Anyway, Conclave, great movie, highly recommended. Also watching Andor, Season 2 on Disney+. That's the latest Star Wars spin-off series. It's a prequel to the movie Rogue One, which was really great also, actually. That was the best modern Star Wars by far, in my opinion. And this show is also very good. It's just a little light in general, like all Star Wars shows are. Not nearly as substantial feeling as the Dune movies, for example. But still enjoying it quite a bit. Happy to recommend that as well, if you like that sort of thing. And that's highly recommended. And our show for this week. I hope you have a great week ahead. Summer's almost here. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, keep up the good work. I'll see you next week.